We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Hopefully, your day is going well. It is Sunday, the day of rest for a lot of folks, but here I am working again. This isn't really work. I enjoy doing it, and it's always a pleasure to sit down and talk to you folks. I'm just grateful that you're here to listen. So, here we go. Now, yesterday, Saturday, didn't have a lot going on. I did a few TikToks. My wife and I took a ride. We did some errands. We had to buy my granddaughter a life jacket. Uh, just normal stuff, just doing normal stuff. But I wanted to tell you about a place that is my absolute favorite place. Now, if you don't live in Minnesota or don't have occasion to come to Minnesota, this doesn't matter to you. But if you do come to Minnesota, we had lunch at this place, and I will say categorically, they have the best hamburgers I've ever had anywhere. And I won't say I'm a hamburger aficionado, but I have a lot of hamburgers in a lot of different places in different parts of the country. And there are plenty of good hamburger places out there. We have a place in town in South Minneapolis where I grew up called Matt's, which is famous for the Juicy Lucy, which has cheese in the middle of the burger. And it's a great burger. But the place I'm going to tell you about even beats that by a fucking mile. And anybody who disagrees with me, I'm not a violent man, but if you disagree with me after having tried this place, I'll fucking fight you. That's just it. There's no two ways about it. So anyway, my wife and I will have occasion to go to lunch there. And it's a place called Lion's Tap, spelled Lions, not Lions like the name, actual Lion's Tap. And this place only makes hamburgers. That's all they sell. They make hamburgers all day. You can get hamburgers, cheeseburgers, double burgers, California burgers, whatever you want, but it's only burgers. And they have standard fries. They're pretty good fries, but standard fries. But I'm telling you, if you go to this place, if you're ever in town or you're currently in Minnesota now, go to Lion's Tap. I'll guarantee you it's the best hamburger ever. It's very juicy, very well seasoned. It's awesome. Now, why you would care about that, I don't fucking know. But again, it's my show. I'll talk about whatever the fuck I want. Now, we got a few emails that we need to get to, but I've got something in the mail in my P.O. box. And it's been sitting here for a little bit. And I'm sorry, I meant to put it on the show, so I'm going to do it now. I got this note. It says, "Thank you for wanting to save our democracy. Vote blue," smiley face, Gina. Now, Gina sent a number of emails to the show, and it's always a pleasure to hear from her. And she told me she was going to send this, and it is a pin, and it's a blue dot. See if we can get it here. Blue dot with a heart in it. And I said, that sounds like a great idea, especially if you live in a red state. You got the blue dot and the red heart. So Gina, thank you for sending that to me. And I got to tell you, when I got this, it reminded me of a story, and I maybe even told it on the podcast, probably when I was talking to Ed. Now, if you remember, I've told you that Ed and I worked at the same radio station for like 25 years. We worked together a lot. And when we worked together, we had a third party in this group during the morning shift. And his name was Terry. And he was kind of the DJ. Ed was kind of the news guy. I was kind of the traffic guy. But sometimes we'd all get together and talk at the same time about stuff not related to what we were supposed to be talking about, which got us into trouble now and again. Anyway, you have to understand, we are in a public radio station. That's where we're working at this point. And one Valentine's Day, we're going on the air. Oh, it's Valentine's Day. Happy Valentine's Day. Well, Terry thought he'd take it a step further. And what he did is on Valentine's Day, he would come in and cut out of some construction paper or something, a red heart. He'd cut the heart out, he'd put some tape on it, and he'd stick it to his chest. Why are you doing that? You're on the radio. Nobody knows what the fuck you're doing. he was covering his ass because he'd go on the air on a public radio station tied to the public schools. And he would say, well, it's happy Valentine's Day to you all. It's a Valentine's Day. I got my heart on and I have a heart on all day. And he was just waiting for somebody to call him out on it. I got my heart on and my heart on will be with me all day. That was gutsier than even I was willing to do. Um, Nobody called him out about it either. That was surprising to me. Usually, somebody would say something, somebody would complain, but I guess we had enough fans that nobody bothered to do that. Anyhow, Gina, thank you for this button, and I will wear it. I will wear it. I'm not big on wearing buttons or hats with stuff on it. People always ask me, why don't you have a hat with anything on it? Well, I don't really like promoting other stuff, but more importantly, one of the main reasons I don't wear a hat with anything on it is because if I'm doing TikToks, it will look backwards. So whatever it says on my cap, it will be backwards. And then people will be distracted and complain to me about the hat as being backwards and not listening to what I have to say. It's a little weird, but it's just an idiosyncrasy that I have. All right. We have some other emails. Let's get to them. First one starts out and says, hi, Boomer. Allow me to express 3 fears that I have in ascending order of magnitude. It's already sounding like Garage Door Jeff. Now, I'm aware that I risk being called a pussy-ass bitch, but I'm playing 3D chess, my young friend. Number 1, you already called me that. And B, I had already taken the power out of those words by preemptively being a pussy-ass bitch. Who's laughing now, big boomer? Now, Jeff, you have to understand, you're not explaining why I called you a pussy-ass bitch. It wasn't about anything you said. It wasn't about anything you believe. It was about the fact that people keep asking you to come live on the show, be on the show as a guest, and you never reference it. You never answer it. And of course, you've never been on the show. For that reason, I call you a pussy ass bitch. So don't try to make it like I'm calling you out on something you think, because we do agree a lot. Goes on to say, but first, I hope they don't do the handshake at the debate. Trump will do that stupid hand pull thing he does and try to topple Joe. Second, I worry about Alito and Thomas. Those 2 motherfuckers have nothing to lose. They're like the Thelma and Louise at this point. They could do something even more egregious than drive a 66 Thunderbird off a cliff. That had those sequential light taillights. They were just badass. I remember those Thunderbirds. Third, you have Trump, who is an absolute do or die situation, and Putin ain't much better off. What would they cook up and what would limit their imaginations and actions? Any chance Putin and Kim discuss that? I can literally picture Trump openly threatening Americans with a Russian and or Korean nuclear strike unless he wins. It's that insane. All right, Boom. Just thought since you were comfortable calling a senior citizen a pussy ass bitch that I'd squeeze in a little of that being just that. Best Garage Door Jeff. P.S. Amy Klobuchar has come up several times. I hope she finds her way to a senior position, even POTUS. As far as a replacement for that weak tit Merrick, I'm drawn to Adam Schiff. He's shown remarkable courage, and that would be just too rich. I don't disagree with you. I think that's a wise choice. Now, here's the interesting thing. Garage Door Jeff sent a typical email, and I appreciate that. And within 2 hours, he sent another. He says, hi, Boomer. One emailer singing Soul's praises, he means old Soul, said something I've thought so many times. Her attributes remind me of the people I saw rise to senior levels in a corporate world. She easily could do circles around 99% of even the best and the brightest in that environment. I agree. But I'm going to push back on one thing she said. In mentioning the poor fellow who was unaware of who was going to take away his Social Security, she suggested that he deserved mercy and some protection from himself. Allow me to offer a counterposition. I think he should have his ears simultaneously clapped so hard that he's temporarily unable to speak and can't see the color blue for a year or so. Tomato, tomato. Best, Garage Door Jeff. P.S. I literally heard that as a side effect in a pharma commercial. Some patients lost the ability to see the color blue. I thought that was one of the most fucked up things I've ever heard. I will agree with you. Thank you, Jeff. Next up. Hi, hey, Mike. Seeing that Samuel Alito was missing during both Thursday and Friday sessions where the Supreme Court issued their decisions sent me down a small rabbit hole. We have heard about Alito and Thomas possibly retiring during the next term if a Republican gets elected president. Well, I looked, and John Roberts and Sonia Sotomayor are both 69, and Elena Kagan is 63. There is the distinct possibilities with the ages of all six of them that several of them could need to be replaced in the next 4 years. If we give Joe Biden another 4 years and a favorable Congress, not only could he add several new justices to the court through expansion, but given their ages and everything else going on, he could potentially replace maybe as many as 6 current justices. Could you imagine how diverse the court could be if he got to do that? That's before you consider anything that he'd get through expansion. You could assume that any of the justices he'd add could be on the bench for 15 to 20 years or more. We could prevent another conservative supermajority Supreme Court for a generation or more. People need to be considering this when voting in November. If they don't like how the Supreme Court is now, they shouldn't reelect the man who's partially responsible for it being this way. The rest of the blame rests on Mitch McConnell. He goes on to say, did you see the story from the Washington Post about the delegates from Arizona? Apparently, there was talk about how to nominate anyone other than Trump. I still think they're going to try to nominate anyone else. The Republicans aren't united. They waited too long and are stuck with Trump. Thanks, Eric. And of course, Eric is our friend in Iowa. There's a lot of talk about people not wanting to nominate Donald Trump, and that makes sense. Too little, too late, though. They stuck by Donald Trump's side for too long. They will have the stink of Donald Trump on them for eternity. There's also talk about people in the Democratic Party wanting to get somebody other than Joe Biden as the nominee. And I've gotten a lot of people come to me and are concerned about that. If it's not Joe Biden, who's it going to be? Listen, it's going to be Joe Biden unless some unforeseen thing happens medically. And he's 82, so you don't really know. But this information or this news coming out is simply a rumor that the Democrats are trying to get a new candidate. And the reason they're going to get a new candidate is because they don't think Joe Biden can beat Donald Trump. That's what the Democrats are saying. Does that really sound like what the Democrats are saying? It sounds like the Republicans are trying to say that. They throw that into the narrative, bounces around for a while, then dumb fucks and some uninformed Democrats believe it. There is no reason to believe that the Democrats are going to try to nominate somebody other than Joe Biden. It would be very tough to do in the first place. You'd almost have to have Joe Biden agree not to run. But the idea you take a president who's doing well in the polls, regardless of what Donald Trump's people will tell you, and has been so successful the past 4 years, the idea that they are going to take them out is ridiculous. These are not Democratic talking points. These are Republican talking points, and they're trying to create dissension, disunity, chaos. This is all they do. So I don't believe that's going to happen. And as far as Donald Trump, the only reason you would pull Donald Trump out is if you could come up with somebody that has a better chance than Donald Trump. And unfortunately, the Republicans don't have anybody. Literally, nobody else gets any kind of support. And if Donald Trump isn't the nominee, well, then you'll have the Trumplafucks not vote at all. Having Donald Trump not be the nominee will be disastrous for the Republican Party. So they will try to hold on to him as long as it's possible, save for any unforeseen things like with Joe Biden, something medical. And that certainly could happen with the pressure that's piled onto Donald Trump. So I don't think either of those things are going to happen. I do think Donald Trump could end up not being the nominee, but it would be because he's just unable to be the nominee. And I'm not talking about votes. I'm not talking about support. I'm talking strictly about not being able to hold up physically or mentally. I think that's a distinct possibility. But if he holds on and he stays steady and doesn't kill somebody on Fifth Avenue, he'll be the nominee too. So we'll see what happens. But I don't think Joe Biden has anybody talking about replacing Joe Biden because they think he's going to lose to Donald Trump. Anybody who thinks that is a dumb fuck, and nobody should take him seriously. All right, the Supreme Court is headed into its final week with about a quarter of the cases heard this year still undecided, including ones that could reshape the law on everything from abortion to social media. Now, of course, the judges are also still weighing whether former President Donald Trump is immune from criminal prosecution in the election interference case against him roughly 2 months after hearing arguments. The court had 61 cases this term and 15 remain unresolved. And they're the craziest ones. Now, here's some of the major undecided cases. Of course, Donald Trump is arguing that former presidents are immune from prosecution for official acts they took in office, and that indictment he faces on charges of election interference must be dismissed. He's not getting immunity over that. The Supreme Court has previously ruled that former presidents can't be sued in civil cases for what they did in office, but it has never weighed in on criminal immunity. The timing of the decision may be as important as the outcome. Trump's trial in Washington, D.C. may not take place before November's election, even if the court rules he's not immune. Now, a former Pennsylvania police officer is challenging the validity of obstruction charges brought against hundreds of people who took part in the violent assault on the Capitol on January 6th. Trump faces the same charge of obstructing an official proceeding. This issue is whether a law meant to discourage tampering with documents sought in investigations can be used against the Capitol Hill rioters. Well, what were they trying to do? They were trying to stop an official act of Congress, the certification of an election for the presidency. If that is an obstruction, I don't know what the fuck obstruction is. And if they come out saying, well, that's not obstruction, we've got some problems within the Supreme Court. But given that we know we have problems in the Supreme Court, it's hard to say how this is all going to shake out. Of course, we'll be watching, and I suspect this coming week we are going to hear many, if not all of those decisions, including the immunity case. Now, there's a second abortion case. Whether doctors can provide that medical procedure in emergencies in states that banned abortion after the court overturned Roe v. Wade. And we've talked about this with Old Soul. If women's lives are at risk or their health is in danger, can they provide that medical procedure in emergencies? In a case out of Idaho, The Biden administration says abortions must be allowed in emergencies where a woman's health is seriously at risk. Common sense, that makes sense. The state argues that its a strict abortion ban does not allow abortions to save a woman's life and does not need to expand exceptions for health risk. This is how draconian these motherfuckers are. They are um, willing to sacrifice women. Now understand this. If the woman dies, if the infant or the fetus is still viable, when the mother dies, so will the fetus, assuming the fetus hasn't already succumbed, and that's why she needs the operation. It's all fucking ridiculous. This is just about ego. We got to have it our way. Everybody else and the safety and the health care of women, fuck them, be damned. That should be an easy one. Now, the most significant Supreme Court case in decades on homeless centers or homelessness centers on whether people can be banned from sleeping outdoors when shelter space is lacking. So you're going to ban people from sleeping outdoors because there isn't enough shelter. What are you going to do with them? Fuck, they might as well go out there and get arrested so they can go to jail and have a roof over their head. Now you're getting all kinds of people in jail. These are just stupid fucking questions. A San Francisco-based appeals court decision said that amounts to cruel and unusual punishment. Leaders from California and across the West say that the ruling makes it harder for them to regulate homeless encampments encroaching on sidewalks and other public places. Now, don't get me wrong. I understand this is a problem. But why do we have a problem with homelessness? It's not because they're lazy. It's not because they're bad people. The reason we have a problem with homelessness is because of the way Congress has dealt with this and how the Republicans have refused to do anything for the poor or even the middle class. If our government did the things that they needed to do and didn't give rich people $2 trillion as a tax break, we could use money to address homelessness. I mean, wouldn't it make sense to help people find shelter and then help them along the way so they might end up becoming a viable part of society and economy? Now, I'm not saying that homeless people are not important in our society. They're just as important as anybody else. But wouldn't it make sense to try to give them a chance, give them a shot to participate in society as opposed to sleeping on the streets or in shelters or doing whatever the fuck that Republicans expect them to do? Now, advocates say it would criminalize homelessness, just as rising costs have pushed the number of people without a permanent place to live to record levels. How do you do that? How do you make it illegal to be homeless? You got no money, you got no prospects, you got to do something, and now you're going to get arrested for conditions that you're not necessarily responsible for. The justices could overturn a 40-year-old decision that has been cited thousands of times in federal court and used to uphold regulations on the environment, public health, workplace safety, and consumer protections. The decision, known as Chevron, calls on judges to defer to federal regulators when the words of a statute are not crystal clear. The decision has long been targeted by conservatives and business interests who say Chevron robs judges of their authority and gives them too much power. Now, what they're suggesting there is that when you have federal regulatory places like the FDA or things like that, they want to take the decision part of it. If the FDA or somebody says this isn't good, we've got to get rid of it, they want to take that power away from them because, of course, the conservatives and the wealthy business folks want to do whatever they want to do. They want to get rid of as many regulations as possible, and they want to run roughshod. That's what Donald Trump promises to do for them, and this is what they're trying to pull in this Supreme Court case. This is going to be interesting. I'm not sure how the Supreme Court is going to find this. But after these next 15 decisions, we may have quite a mess in DC and throughout the country. And this will be even more ammunition for people to vote against these fucking Republicans. Now, 3 cases remain unresolved at the intersection of social media and government. 2 cases involve social media laws in Texas and Florida that would limit how Facebook, TikTok, X, YouTube, and other social media platforms regulate content posted by their users. While the details vary, both laws aim to address conservative complaints that social media companies were liberal-leaning and censored users based on their viewpoints, especially on the political right. Well, maybe you should put Fox News in there, OAN and Newsmax. They're constantly spewing falsehoods. They're constantly not reporting on real news and omitting real news so that their listeners are unaware about, well, I don't know, the truth. In the third case, Republican-led states are suing the Biden administration over how far the federal government can go to combat controversial social media posts on topics including COVID-19 and election security. A federal appeals court sided with the states in finding that the administration officials unconstitutionally coerced the platforms to limit conservative points of view. They probably did, but understand what those conservative points of view are. Let's talk about COVID-19 and election security. They said COVID-19 wasn't a thing. It wasn't real. It was a hoax, that masks were unnecessary and masks were just a way the government is going to control you. So while these might be conservative points of view, they were putting the country in danger, and what they were saying was an absolute lie. Let's not talk. That's the fucked up thing about this. And I've had this argument with Trump-lefucks before. They have their point of view and I have my point of view, and they say, why can't you see my point of view? Why can't we come to some terms in the middle? Well, it's impossible if what you're saying is a lie and is wrong and what I'm saying is true. Where is the middle ground there? There is no fucking middle ground at that point. Now, the Supreme Court controls the fate of a nationwide settlement with OxyContin maker Purdue Pharma that would allocate billions of dollars to combat the opioid epidemic, but also provide a legal shield for members of the Sackler family who own the company. The settlement has been on hold since last summer after the Supreme Court agreed to weigh in. So these guys go out dishing out these dangerous drugs, killing people left and right, and the people who own the company do not want to be held responsible. I don't know what the Supreme Court is going to say, but for the Sackler family, fuck you. You should hang. Republican-led energy-producing states and the steel industry want the court to put the Environmental Protection Agency's air pollution fighting Good Neighbor plan on hold while legal challenges continue. The plan aims to protect downwind states that receive unwanted air pollution from other states. Here we go. There's not a climate crisis. We've had the hottest summer so far, and we aren't even into summer as yet. We've got fires. We got flooding in Idaho or Iowa. We got flooding everywhere, but they still want to be free to do whatever they fucking want. They don't believe in climate change, and climate change is clearly happening. And they go to the Supreme Court to allow them to continue to destroy our ecology. Another important regulatory case could strip the SEC of a major tool in fighting securities fraud and have far-reaching effects on other regulatory agencies. The court is being asked to rule that people facing civil fraud complaints have the right to a jury trial in federal court. So once again, this is the conservatives wanting to allow people in the stock market to do whatever the fuck they want. And that's exactly what they do. And they want to not be accountable for the fucked up shit they do. It's absolutely ridiculous. And these are the kinds of cases that are going to the Supreme Court. And we have to sit here and chew our fingernails worrying about whether or not the Supreme Court will make the right choice that is best for this country and the people in it. That is absolutely fucked up. And this is why I've said once we get control of the House and the Senate and the presidency, we need to codify Roe v. Wade, get rid of Citizens United, and fix that fucking Supreme Court because it is a mess and it's damaging this country and the future of this country every fucking day. All right. We will take a quick break and we will be right back. All right, we are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. We continue on. I know a lot of people are concerned about the classified documents case down in Florida and the misdeeds of Judge Aileen Cannon. Everybody's wondering, when are they going to kick her out? When are they going to make her recuse herself from this case? Every day she does something stupid or she continues to drag her feet in this case. And as I've told you before, the only way to have Jack Smith appeal her decision and to get her recused is she's got to make a fucking decision. She's been very cagey about this, like with the gag order thing. She delayed it. Now, hopefully this week she'll have to come up with a decision with this gag order for Donald Trump. He's clearly putting law enforcement, the FBI in danger by the things he says, the lies he tells. There's a few things on deck that Judge Aileen Cannon may put herself in a bad situation. In fact, Judge Aileen Cannon may be about to give special counsel Jack Smith his first real way to get her removed from Donald Trump's case. This was said by former prosecutor, ex-U.S. Attorney Harry Litman. He was on CNN where he was asked about the Florida classified documents case. Specifically, the host asked how Litman viewed the case, which has been plagued by delays for several months. Litman said that he expects the delays to continue unless Cannon is somehow replaced. He added that Cannon has so far not given Smith any such opportunities, but she may be about to slip up. He goes on to say, however, there's a motion before her now involving a gag order, and if she just doesn't rule on it or has been what she's wanted to do, I think the DOJ could say this is serious and it's emergent and bring it up to the 11th Circuit. So if she makes the wrong decision on the gag order by denying it, or she doesn't make any decision at all, that may justify going to the 11th Circuit. So that's good to know. He goes on to say, and there are indications that the circuit would be all too happy to recuse her, that her general treatment of the case has been a bit of a black eye for everyone in that circuit. We know she's been overturned a couple of times before. We know that a couple of judges, including the chief federal judge in Florida, told her early on that she should recuse herself, and she ignored that. She did not do that, obviously. And the fact that that came out recently is interesting to me. That came out after it happened long ago. And usually these courts would be pretty tight-lipped about this sort of thing, not wanting to embarrass anyone. But this one did leak out. And why did it leak out? You have to wonder if it's not a shot across the bow to Aileen Cannon and say, fuck around and find out. We're not playing anymore. You're doing a horrible job. You're clearly biased. And here we go. We've told everybody now that we didn't want you there in the first place. These judges, these normal judges, are looking like fools the longer she stays in. So they need to do something to straighten her out. And because they don't have a decision to decide on until Jack Smith provides one and until she does something, they're throwing that out there to make her sit up and take notice. Your time is short, bitch. He continued, so I think absent being removed from the case, it couldn't happen. And even if she is, we're just about at the time where putting a new judge and getting that judge up to speed is probably too late for a trial before November. I think that goes without saying. She's been successful at delaying this. And as I've said before, um, it really doesn't matter. That case doesn't have to go before the election. We've got the Manhattan District case. Once they come out and say that there is no immunity, Judge Chutkin in Washington, D.C. has said they'll give them 80, 88 days to catch up, and then we'll have a trial. That would put us in court before the November election. And so we might get a second trial before the election. But frankly, the Manhattan District trial and 34 felony charges with convictions was enough. That was enough to get us through the election. And then when the election happens and Donald Trump is nobody who's nowhere with no support, he's going to have to pay the price in these trials with no protection. It's it's a weird thing down there. It's not something we've ever seen before. Um, it's hard to say what she will do. Will she be afraid for her own life? Will she be afraid for her own future? Or will she be afraid not to bend over literally for Donald Trump? Um, it's fucked up. There's no question about it. Thankfully, I don't think it changes anything for the election. Um, all right, let's continue on. We've got the debate coming up, and this is going to be very interesting. We don't know um, how this is going to go down. We don't even know for sure whether or not Donald Trump is going to show up. He's caught between a rock and a hard place. If he doesn't show up, he's a pussy ass bitch. And that's the last thing Donald Trump, this egomaniacal narcissist, wants to happen. But if he does show up, he's going to be made to look like a fool. He's confused at best. He's disoriented. He can't spew a single sentence. He can't stay on track. He can only look foolish in this case. Now, Trump has been ridiculed for numerous verbal misfires as of late. Um, and what they did was they're constantly saying Joe Biden is slow, he's doddering, he can't complete a sentence. That's what they're saying. But they may have fucked up when they did that. In fact, I know they fucked up because what they did is they kept telling people that Joe's like a corpse. He can't even talk. He's crazed. He's not with us anymore. So no matter what Joe Biden does when he comes to that debate, and he will show up, um, he can't help but exceed expectations. He can't help to look better than what Donald Trump promised he would be. And that is a mistake for the Republicans at this point. Um, Donald Trump said, so a little before debate time, he gets a shot in the ass, Trump said. They want to strengthen him up. So he comes out. He'll come out. Okay. I say he'll come out all jacked up, right? Says the guy who refuses to take a drug test. Yeah. That's a good one, Donnie. I mean, that's the problem. What we're dealing with is an incorrigible middle school kid coming up with ridiculous excuses because they didn't win a game or a debate. Donald Trump knows he's not going to win. He's already making up the excuses. He's already coming out and saying, oh, the debate is rigged. Well, that's ironic because he's the one that called for the debate. He's the one that begged for the debate. And the whole reason he did that is because he needed the attention. He needed something to fundraise off. So now Joe Biden did exactly what Donald Trump didn't expect. Donald Trump was behaving like a bully. He was taunting Joe Biden, trying to scare Joe Biden. Unfortunately, Joe wasn't scared. And what happens is when a bully is stood up to, they go, holy shit, what's going on now? He has nothing to back it up. So now he can only make excuses as to why he will lose because he knows he will lose. It's rigged. Joe Biden's on drugs. What Joe Biden should do is take a drug test before the show and say, by the way, motherfucker, here it is. Where's yours? There was a lot of people. Uh, there was a lot of people who posted things on X and such. Here's one that said, everything he accuses someone of doing, he's already been caught doing. True. Here's another one. Who is going to come out jacked up? Unlike DJT, President Biden has never shown any signs of drug use. That's a super specific fantasy, Donald. Um, Picked up on an apparent shift on Trump's team's messaging. See there, they pick on Sleepy Joe every day of the week, except when it's debate time. Now they actually do want him to be Sleepy Joe. Brian Tyler Cohen, who's a well-known creator on TikTok, says he's lowering expectations because he's scared. Another one says, sounds more like a personal experience than anything remotely applicable to Joe Biden. Disgusting. This is what fear looks and sounds like. They said Trump's slandering President Biden and accusing him of using drugs because Trump can't accept President Biden would beat him in the merits. Jackie Woolner wrote, so now we know Trump gets some sort of stimulant shot in the ass. Every accusation is a confession. And that is absolutely true. There is a lot of talk about Donald Trump taking drugs. If for nothing else, taking Adderall just to maintain a relative normality, which really doesn't exist with Donald Trump. It's going to be interesting. Somebody emailed yesterday and said that Donald Trump refused to take it before he spoke with the probationary officer, but is required to do it at some point before the sentencing. We'll see if he does that. That'll come after the debate, of course. But the fact is he will do everything he can not to take the drug test. But here's the deal, Donnie. In this particular situation, you're not the ex-president. You are a current convict. Convicts don't get options. You do what the fuck you're told or you get more time. That's as simple as that. And I think when the sentencing does come down on July 11th, whether he takes the drug test or not, there's a lot of things that are going to be taken into account. His behavior, lack of remorse, his disregard and disrespect of the court, the judge, the lawyers, the prosecution, and even the jury, not to mention 13 or 14 gag order violations. Those all have to come into play in the sentencing. And if you think he's going to get off easy, I just don't see how that's possible. Not only do I think that Judge Juan Marchand wouldn't let him off easy, I don't think he can, given all that we have to consider. We'll see what happens. I could be wrong. And if I am, I'll acknowledge it, but I just don't think I am. Whenever Donald Trump gets sentenced, it's going to fuck with his head big time because now it's imminent. And I hope they separate out the gag order violations and sentence him to something different other than what they're sentencing him to with regards to the 34 felony convictions. Now, Donald Trump was talking about the debates coming up. And I've always said, just let Donald Trump talk. He'll fuck himself over every time. Now, Donald Trump recently telegraphed how he'll come at President Joe Biden in the next week's presidential debate. And now Biden's advisors are refining the president's counterattack. I don't know how much you have to refine it, because when you hear what he's going to do, it's not hard to push back. In his latest column for the New Republic, writer Greg Sargent Biden delved into how Biden's campaign team is preparing for the president to respond to likely attacks from his Republican opponent focused on immigration. On his Truth Social platform, Trump strongly hinted that he'll be attempting to pin isolated incidents of undocumented immigrants committing violent crimes during Biden's watch by saying things like, we have a new Biden migrant killing. It's only going to get worse, and it's all crooked Joe Biden's fault. The former president wrote, I look forward to seeing him at the fake debate on Thursday, the one he called for. Let him explain why he's allowed millions of people come into our country illegally. Now, of course, Sargent noted that facts don't jibe with Trump's assertions that immigrant crime is a serious problem. Earlier this year, data from various large urban police departments showed that native-born U.S. citizens commit crime at a much higher rate than undocumented immigrants. Contrary to public perception, we observed considerably lower felony arrest rates among undocumented immigrants compared to legal immigrants and native-born U.S. citizens. Now, this won't stop Donald Trump. And if you're trying to refine how you hit back at a comment like that, because that's really all Donald Trump has, that's all Donald Trump can really argue. Oh, the border's open. The border's open. And all these drug addicts and rapists are coming in and they're violently attacking our citizens. Well, that's just not true. The situation with the border isn't much different than when he had it. Be honest with you, Obama deported way more people than Donald Trump ever did, and so has Joe Biden. So their point makes no sense. But if I'm Joe Biden and I hear Donald Trump saying, what about this killing in Arkansas and such and such? What if they do that? If I'm Joe Biden, I just come back and I say, well, I understand you're worried about these situations. But the question is, if you're so worried about these things, why did you instruct Congress not to vote for the bipartisan border bill, a very stringent bill, giving the Republicans everything they want? Why did you have them shut it down? Not once, but twice. And then let Donald Trump dribble all over himself and talk his shit. Now, this, of course, won't stop Trump from attempting to frame the immigrant crime as a prominent and to lay blame for it at Biden's feet. But that's all he's got. Those close to the president say Biden has a major opening to parry that line of attack and to turn the tables back on his opponent. Former Bill Clinton advisor James Carville told Sargent that Biden could say to Trump, when I took over from you, crime in the United States was rising. I inherited a rising crime rate. We are now in one of the greatest declines in crime we've had in modern American history. Carville says the public doesn't know that. Well, we hear people talking about it, but a lot of people don't comprehend that or retain that. And I think Carville is right. We need to keep crowing about the successes of the Biden administration. Donald Trump will keep saying it's not a success, that Biden did this and that and the other thing, all of which are lies. And if we let them to continue to repeat these things, people will get it stuck in their heads, and some of the dumbest among us will think that's true. Well, the clock is ticking on Steve Bannon. He's about ready to go to jail in about, well, what is it now? How many days are there in June? 30? About 7 days, about a week. Steve Bannon's going to jail, and boy, he's wiggling around like a fish in the bottom of the boat. Steve Bannon, a longtime ally of former President Trump, asked the Supreme Court on Friday to delay his prison sentence while he fights his convictions for defying a subpoena from the House committee that investigated the attack on the U.S. Capitol. He's been turned down by the appeals court. That was really his only hope. So now he's trying to go beg to the Supreme Court, except what Steve Bannon has to remember is the end of the term for the Supreme Court is in about a week when you're supposed to go to jail. And They've got 15 more decisions to put out. They're kind of busy at this point. Do you really think the Supreme Court is going to take this up because you're Steve Bannon? Please, motherfucker, that's not going to happen. Now, Steve is rolling around saying, well, it's really important that I stay out of jail because I'm a mouthpiece for the Republicans and the conservatives in this upcoming election. No, bitch, you're not. The best thing that could happen to the Republicans is they lock you up and shut you up. Now, the emergency application came after a federal appeals court panel rejected Bannon's bid to avoid reporting to prison by July 1st to serve his 4-month sentence. It was addressed to Chief Justice John Roberts, who oversees emergency appeals from the courts of Washington, D.C. The High Court asked the Justice Department to respond to the request by Wednesday before the court is set to begin its summer recess. The court denied a similar request from another Trump aide shortly after receiving a response in March. Now, Bannon was convicted nearly 2 years ago. He's been out of jail for 2 years. Navarro's currently in jail for the very same crime. He has 2 counts of contempt of Congress, one for refusing to sit for a deposition with the J6 House Committee, and the other for refusing to provide documents related to his involvement in Trump's efforts to overturn the 2020 election. Now, Bannon has cast the case as politically motivated, and his attorney, David Shane, has said the case raises serious constitutional issues that need to be examined by the Supreme Court. Serious constitutional issues. A court found him guilty. An appeals court found that he had no standing. I don't think that's a problem. Now, if Bannon goes to prison next month, he will likely have to serve his full sentence before the High Court has a chance to review those questions, since the court is due to take its summer recess at the end of June. His lawyer says the former advisor didn't ignore the subpoena. Well, yeah, you did. He got a subpoena. They requested he come testify, and he never showed up. There's no gray area here. It's all pretty black and white. But he was still negotiating with the Congressional committee when he was charged. So you're telling me that you hadn't finished negotiating with the committee to show up. You were going to show up, but you were negotiating with you. Apparently, the J6 committee didn't see it that way, didn't see they were in the middle of negotiations. Could it be that Steve Bannon is lying? Oh, heavens, no. His previous attorney told him that the subpoena was invalid because the Republican former president has asserted executive privilege, and the committee would not allow a Trump lawyer in the room. Again, we've talked about executive privilege. The only person who can assert executive privilege is a sitting president. Donald Trump was not a sitting president when he claimed executive privilege on this particular situation. So it's not a thing. It's not legal. It's not constitutional. And certainly some greasy motherfucker like Steve Bannon doesn't have the right to assert executive privilege. That motherfucker got fired by Donald Trump. Now, in court papers, Bannon's lawyers also previously argued that there was a strong public interest in allowing him to remain free in the run-up to the 2024 election because Bannon is a top advisor to Trump's campaign. Bannon's prison term has been delayed as he appealed the U.S. District Judge Carl Nichols' order to turn himself in after an appeals court panel upheld his contempt of Congress. See, now he's pissed because his 4 months are July, August, September, October, leading right up to the election, and he's going to be shut up for that period. Now he's trying to convince people, well, I'm very important here, so you can't put me in jail. Yes, motherfucker, you can. You were convicted. You were turned down in an appeal. The fact that you delayed it this long is on you. It's not on the courts. 2 years ago, you could have took the 4 months, did it standing on your head, and then you wouldn't have to deal with this because you're a dumb motherfucker and you're an egomaniac. You did what you did, and now you're stuck with what you've got to deal with. Now, second Trump aide, we talked about him, P.D. Navarro, was also convicted of contempt of Congress. He reported to prison in March to serve his 4-month sentence after the Supreme Court refused his bid to delay the sentence. So if they refuse to delay Navarro's sentence and Steve Bannon is being charged for the very same thing, what could they possibly do? Now, in addition to this, what you need to know, Bannon is also facing criminal charges in the New York State Court alleging he duped donors who gave money to build the wall along the U.S. southern border. That's right. This motherfucker stole money from Trumplafucks, and they still support this stupid bitch. Okay, go ahead, rob me. Go ahead, rape me and pillage me. You're still my guy. Bannon has pleaded not guilty to money laundering, conspiracy, fraud, and other charges, and that trial has been postponed until at least the end of September, which means is he would have to be pulled from jail to attend this trial. And that's not even the end of uh, Steve Bannon's problems, because I think it's more than likely that he will end up getting involved in these superseding indictments that Jack Smith is alleged to be putting out after the election with sitting members of Congress, with Ginny Thomas, with Steve motherfucking Bannon. Bannon's life is done. He's going to do the 4 months. He's going to go to court for money laundering. He's probably going to lose that. And then ultimately, he may go to court for January 6th. So, you greasy motherfucker, you might as well resign yourself to the fact that you're no longer in business as far as being a presidential candidate's advisor. All right, as we get down to the end here, Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg has agreed to testify before Congress on July 12th after former President Donald Trump's sentencing in his hush money trial. Now, see, this is Jim Jordan and these dumb fucks. They want to get Alvin Bragg in there. They're going to expose how he's weaponized. Yeah, that's not going to happen. Alvin Bragg is a smart man. He wouldn't show up unless he knew what the fuck he was going to do. Now, what Jim Jordan and these idiots really wanted to do is have him show up before the sentencing to somehow create some chaos to affect Donald Trump's sentence. Well, Alvin Bragg's too smart for that and said, no, motherfucker, I'll come after the sentencing. And I have to think that Jim Jordan and all these people are less interested in having him come testify. So it's going to be interesting if they still have him testify, because they're going to look foolish. This is not going to help them in the election. Bragg isn't a dumb guy, and he knows exactly what he's doing. He doesn't need to show up. So the question is, why does he show up? Why does he agree to it? I'm thinking, regardless of what it is, it's not good news for Jim Jordan and the Republicans. A spokesperson for Bragg's office confirmed Tuesday that he will appear before the House Select Subcommittee on Weaponization of the federal government alongside Matthew Colangelo, the former high-ranking Justice Department official who was hired by Bragg in 2022 and helped lead the Trump investigation. Now, Bragg and Colangelo will face what's likely to be hostile Republican-controlled hearing where the chairman, Representative Jim Jordan of Ohio, has accused both men of conducting a political prosecution in the case against the former president. It will mark the latest effort by Trump's closest allies in Congress to discredit the recent 34-count conviction. And I don't know what they hope to gain by that. Even if they could find a way to discredit it, it's not going to change anything. Still a motherfucking convict. He's still fucking done. Now, Jordan says it undermines the rule of law to spread dangerous misinformation, baseless claims, and conspiracy theories following the jury's return of a full count felony conviction in People v. Trump. The Manhattan District, the district attorney, and his staff seem to be ready, willing, and able to come at me, bro. They don't seem to be concerned about it at all. In fact, maybe they hope to make a point. Now, it's important to remember Alvin Bragg, who's a Democrat, sued Jim Jordan last year, seeking to halt a House Judiciary Committee inquiring into Trump's indictment. He later agreed to let the Republican-led committee question ex-prosecutor Mark Pomerantz, who once oversaw the investigation but left the job after clashing with Bragg over the direction of the case. You remember that? They brought in Mark Pomerantz. He no longer worked for the Manhattan District, but they thought they were going to expose some shit. And of course, Mark Pomerantz just made them look like dumb fucks. Soon after Trump's April 2023 arraignment, Jordan took the Judiciary Committee on the road for a field hearing near Bragg's offices to examine what he decried as the Democrats' pro-crime, anti-victim policies. Democrats described the hearing and various efforts since by Republicans as a partisan stunt aimed at amplifying conservative anger at Bragg. Jordan has proposed withholding federal funding from any entity that attempts to prosecute a former president. Well, Jim, how do you expect you're going to do that? You got to pass that through Congress. Do you think that's going to pass in the Senate? Do you even think it's going to pass in the House? And even if it did pass in the House and the Senate, is Joe Biden going to sign it? Please, motherfucker. All these people are trying to do is make noise. They know they have no chance. They know they're going to lose, and they have no shame or no integrity. So they're just going to try to create chaos and make a mess. But Jim Jordan's been doing that for almost 4 years, and he's failed every fucking time. So this is probably why Alvin Bragg isn't worried about this. In fact, maybe Alvin Bragg is looking for the possibility of putting this dumb motherfucker in his place and ending this for Jim Jordan and the rest of these dumb shits. All right. We are going to wrap up the Rational Boomer podcast. I want to thank you for taking the time to listen to the show. I hope you have a great day. And of course, we will talk to you tomorrow.